How do your rigs sit underwater? What can fish actually see? How do you cast and bait up accurately? And what do you need to catch consistently?
Cracking dark scaly mirror, absolutely stunning.
I've been a carp angler for over 30 years and a diver for nearly 20. I spend a massive amount of my time underwater studying carp and carp fishing. I've seen the best and the worst. I've swum with them, watched them feed and studied their behaviour and characteristics. In total, I've got hundreds of hours of knowledge and some incredible underwater footage that I'm more than happy to share with you. Welcome to Understanding Underwater.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Understanding Underwater. Firstly, I'm going to say thank you ever so much for the feedback that you've given us on the previous films. It's really good to see that, and also it's just a great thing to do. We really enjoy doing it, and if you're enjoying it, we'll just keep doing it and keep pumping the stuff out. So don't forget, send in your questions either through social media or alternatively my page, Dynamite page, Carp Spirit page. Get those questions into us and we'll do the very best that we can do to answer them for you. Well, as you can see, I'm out today again. I'm on the bank and this is a very, very special venue. This is Green Hills Lake on the Bishop's Bowl complex. It's an old quarry. It's a unique venue, partly because the water is absolutely crystal clear. And today I'm going to be going below the surface to answer more of your questions. So we'll do our best. It's chucking it down with rain. I don't know what the water conditions are like yet, but I'm sure they're going to be fine. Get your questions in, we'll get answering them.
Hello Rob, quick question on solid PVA bags. If you're fishing on thin carpet weed, will a pop-up present better or just as well as a wafter? And if you add oil to a bag, how much longer will it add to the dissolve time of the bag?
Well, that's a brilliant question. PVA bags are just such a good way of catching fish. They used to be really, really popular, but these days they've sort of gone out of fashion a little bit. And it's really interesting looking at how fashion changes through carp fishing. You know, back in the day, we used to use stringers a lot. Then it went to PVA bags. Then it went to sticks. Now it seems to be Ronnies. Prior to that, it was Choddies. You know, lots of people use the same thing that's trendy, but there are certain things that will work all the time, and solid PVA bags in particular are one of them. Now, let's have a look at PVA. One thing I'm going to say first is a lot of people ask, what is the greatest invention since the hair rig? For me, it's PVA without any shadow of doubt. Whether it is string, whether it's mesh, whether it's solid bags, whether it's nuggets, whatever it is, PVA just allows you to do so much and it can help you so much in your fishing. So if you don't use it very often, try it. Just try different areas and see how much it works. We're going to look at solids in particular today. And one of the things with solids is that there is a bit of a conception that you can chuck it anywhere and it will fish. Now for me, that's a big no-no. You know, I've heard people saying, oh yeah, just chuck it into the weed, it's absolutely fine. It isn't, trust me, it really, really isn't. I've seen it both below the surface and I've also seen it and experienced it when I'm fishing myself. If you bung it in the wrong place, it's next to useless, and that goes for any rig at all. So let's have a little look at where you can and also where you shouldn't use PVA bags. Before anybody turns around and says, oh, don't worry about it, they'll find it. Yes, they might do. But for me, the key thing is getting a bite as quickly as possible. You know, my job, certainly within the England team, is to work out patterns, work out a strategy and get bites quicker than everyone else. And you can chuck a solid in weed, and yes, you might catch on it, and there might be loads of old boys on there, they're going, oh, I used to do that. You might catch one in a week. You know what, we'll catch one in 5 minutes. So if you present the right thing in the right place, it's going to be so much better for you. Where not to use them first? Well, The big one for me is thick, heavy weed. And remember, weed comes in lots of different things. It can be sparse and long. And by sparse and long, I mean light Canadian or broad-leafed, that you can actually get to the bottom in. And if you can get to the bottom in it, you know what? Yes, you can possibly present a bait in there. And in addition, if the fish move through it, then you know what? Yes, you can there as well. But only if it's sparse. And by that, I mean that it doesn't grow thick. Now, let's have a look at thick weed, thick beds of Canadian. Absolute no-no. If you're pulling Canadian weed in and it's thicker than about 1.5 foot deep, forget your solid PVA bags. Find a clean spot and present them there instead. Then let's have a look at short weed, like grass, like silkweed, like things like that. Can you present a bag there? The answer is yes, and I'll go through different types of bags that you can use there to make it a little bit better. So weed, be a little bit careful. Don't just lob it in and think you'll be all right, because you won't. The second one to think about is silt. Now, on my Facebook page a while ago, I put up a picture of a PVA bag that had sunk in silt, and there was a few clever people that came on and said, yeah, but fish feed in silt. They're used to feeding in silt. Are you telling me they're not going to find it? I'll go back to what I said a minute ago. Yes, they will find it, but it'll take them ages. Why make it difficult? Why bury it when you can put it on top of the table? That's my view. So if it's thick silt, and by thick silt I mean anything thicker than sort of that deep, I wouldn't bother, because they look a little bit like this. And this is what happens when a bag sinks into silt. Eventually it will carry on getting sucked in, it will get covered over, and basically it's rendered next to useless. Yes, they might find it, but you know what? I'm not going to wait for that. I want to present it in the right place and get the bite quicker. So the best place to present PVA bags is on a relatively firm bottom, somewhere where with a lead you feel it down and you feel a donk. Now yes, you can present a boilie there as well, but a PVA bag offers so much more than just a boilie, because you can add colours to it, you can add texture to it, you can add smell to it. It can be a big one, a small one. There's all sorts of things you can do with a solid bag to make it worthwhile. So let's go through a number of bag presentations now and look at their benefits and how they work best on hard bottoms. In clear water in particular, nobody will be able to convince me that fish aren't sight feeders as well as scent feeders. Now, they find their food in a number of different ways, just like we do as well. Think about our senses. You can smell it, you can taste it, you can see it. If it's dark, you can actually feel it. Fish are exactly the same. So they've got nostrils on the top of the head. They can smell food. They can hear food. Yeah, that sounds a bit weird, but they've got really, really good hearing, and noise travels underwater. And I've seen it with my own eyes when fish have been feeding on pellets and crunch. Other fish can hear that and they'll come in and they'll feed, or they'll be looking for the fact that another fish is feeding somewhere. So they hear food, they see food, they smell food. Now, seeing food is really, really important, particularly in my mind in clear water, because they're on the lookout for food all the time. They're looking for predators, obviously, because their eyes are on the side. They're looking around to make sure they're safe, but they're also on the lookout for food as well. So if they're looking for food, how do you make your food stand out a little bit more? And the best way to do that is firstly make it smell more, but secondly make it stand out against the surroundings. If you look across the colour of the bottom of a lake, a lot of the time it's yellowy grey. It tends to be lighter rather than darker. And it's really interesting actually here today. We're at Green Hills. This is a quarry, and if you have a look around the outside of it, you'll see in between the stone walls, you'll see the sand and the stone and the gravel in between there is like a grey colour. Now when it goes underwater, it lightens up. So interestingly, the colour here is really, really bright. If you're at Linear, for a prime example, it's very yellow, very golden. If you go down to Essex, there's a lot more orange clay down there. Same on the east side of Birmingham. As you go Bedford area, you know, think about London brick, that's a different colour as well. And if you want to know what the colour of the bottom is, I say this all the time, have a look at the stone around you. What's the natural colour around you? Now this gives you two things to think about. Firstly, the colour of your boilie, but secondly, the colour of the pellets you use. We know that we can get different coloured pellets. We know that if you use a bog standard fish meal, if you chuck it in, it looks dark. Over a period of time, it ends up with the oil coming out of it, it goes slightly greyer, it lightens up a little bit. But there's lots of different coloured pellets on the market as well. Our Swim Stim Green is a prime example. Underwater, that really stands out well on clear bottoms. Now you might think, well, it's green, it's disguised. Yes, if you're fishing in weed. But if you're fishing in open water away from weed, that green really stands out. And if you use a vibrant bait over the top of it, that makes a really, really obvious colour pile for fish to home in on. They'll see it. They're very, very inquisitive fish. You know, perch in particular, as soon as something goes in the water, bang, they're over the top of it. The roach will be around the edge. I see carp all the time. They swim up to me. They want to know what I'm doing. If there's any disturbance anywhere, a lot of the time the carp will come up and have a look. They know their environment really, really well. And when there's something different there, they'll go up and they'll assess it. They'll have a look at it. What is it? Firstly, is it dangerous? Can I go anywhere near it? If it is dangerous, they won't. They'll back off. If they don't think it's dangerous, they'll go up and have another look. Firstly, what is it? Secondly, can I eat it? And I know that's really obvious, but remember, these are pretty basic animals. The first thing they're thinking of is, are they safe? The second thing they're thinking is, can they eat it? That's basically all they need to do. Can they live safely? Can they eat? So make something fairly obvious and fish will come in and have a look at it. If they're not used to it, it can be a really, really good edge. And believe me again, I'm not going to go into our full team England details, but using different coloured pellets or different coloured baits, that really does draw fish in, and it can get you a bite when a lot of the time normal stuff won't. Another little edge with that, and as you've seen, sometimes using a disguised bait in it actually really works. If you think about it, how many times do people stick a solid PVA bag out there with a cherry on the top? Whether it's a yellow one, whether it's a red one, whether it's a pink one, that seems to be our go-to method. PVA bag, bright bait on the top. I do it an awful lot myself. And actually the fish might see that, not like the pink bait, not like the yellow bait, not like the white bait, think I'm not touching that. But when there isn't one on there, they've got used to seeing safe piles of pellets everywhere with nothing on. Because actually the hook bait's been reeled in. Someone's cast out, not had a bite, reeled it back in again, happy days. We can eat that, no problem whatsoever. So why not trip them up a little bit? Why not stick and match the hatch bait in there? Something that's really dark, the fish comes in, doesn't see anything obvious, thinks, you know what, that's a dud. The live bit has already been taken out, but guess what? No, it's still in there. That too can be a real edge. Now, putting a pop-up in the bag is a really, really good way of just marking exactly where you've put your bag out. Particularly if it's not windy, you know, you can whip round, chuck a little bit of bait over the top of it. But the big question is, how much bait do you need to put in? Just have a little look at this now. One scoop in, that would be something that you think, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Let's go down below the surface and just have a look at how much bait that is, and also how wide it's spread.
Well, the rig's gone in the water now, and the first thing that you notice is a little donk when that lands. PVA bag, that's dissolving nicely, and the pop-ups just come out there. Just see the air blipping on the surface that's come out of that bag, and there's the pop-up. That's a great indicator to be able to bait up over the top, and that's exactly what Steve's doing now. One scoop in, looks quite good, and underwater you can hear that coming in. That feed makes a real noise when it lands. That's something that will draw fish in. And here we can see the bait just starting to sink down, and you can see it's coming down fairly slowly. The corn really stands out. The boilies have sunk a little bit quicker, and interestingly the boilie is heavier than the corn, so the corn's fallen closer to the bank. You can see it all there, and the boilie is a little bit further this way with the pellets. There's the rig and setup though. Just look at that nice bright hook bait over the top. The leader is sitting beautifully on the bottom, and you cannot see the main line at all. And this is a really, really nice spot here. The corn's standing out, one or two bits of chopped boilies, pellets, and that is a lovely, nice wide spread. In your hand, everything looks really, really tight, but on the deck, it is completely different. You see there a bit of corn, a bit of pellet, and then back to the bag. That is a really inviting little pile of bait there.
And that's incredible. It doesn't seem to matter how many times I go below the surface and see bait that's been put in. It's never as much as I think it is. So one scoop, whilst you think, oh, I better have an overdo it, you know what? It's nothing. Stick a couple more in. Right, it's a really interesting one for you now. And to my knowledge, I don't think this has ever been seen or filmed anywhere before. And I say that with a reasonable amount of confidence because, to be honest, I'm the only person that does this sort of thing, and I've never ever seen it. So whenever I do these things, just to find something that I've never seen before is really interesting. And it's this: oil in PVA bags. Bog standard, yes or no? Loads of people put oil in PVA bags, whether it's a squirt or an injection in. Loads of people do that. But what does it actually do, and how does it behave? Well, just have a look at this. The idea was a couple of squirts within the PVA bag, and let's have a look at how it behaves. And it's landing on the deck, and what's happening is, because it's not water soluble, it's congealing. Part of it is attaching to the pellets, and part of it is coming up in tiny little globules, just small spheres coming up through the water. And that, when you see on the surface, the dimpling, the little blipping as we call it in carp fishing circles, those blips on the surface, those are those balls coming all the way up to the top and breaking up on the surface when they get out of water and into a water air mix. Now, we know that oil will pull fish down, but I think this is the first ever time that we've seen how it pulls it down, because you've got these tiny little balls going up through the water column, and if those fish move through that and taste that, that immediately is going to set their taste buds on fire. Question for me is whether or not we should put a different mix in there as well. Maybe we should put some water soluble stuff in there that won't melt the PVA but will send a cloud smell around. Because if you think about it, in my mind beforehand, I'd got oil coming off in like streaks, almost like swirls of smoke coming up there. But having seen that, and bear in mind this water is quite warm, it's about 18 degrees, maybe 19 degrees at the moment, could have cooled down a bit, but 18, 19 degrees, the oil is still in blobs. It's not completely soluble. In fact, oil never is soluble, but it will come up, I would have thought, a lot quicker than this, but it's just blipping off, and that's when you see the blips on the surface. So for me, the key attraction with oil now isn't necessarily just that it's going through the water column and pulling them down. It's the fact that it is sticking to the pellets. If you have a look back to the footage that we've got, let's have a look at the different colour of pellets in there. You can see that some are lighter than others. That's because the oil's attaching to them, and that once again is a really, really flavour attractive taste to the fish themselves. But once again, you can see that the colour is different and the taste is going to be a lot more attractive to the fish with that little bit of extra oil on it. We know they love oil, we know they like to eat oil, and when you see that puff coming up off the bottom, this is why. So this is a really interesting thing now, just seeing that blip of oil coming out off those bags. Well, that's a load of really interesting information about PVA bags, and hopefully you've picked something up there that will help you catch more carp. I'm sure you have done. Now, Steve, the cameraman that puts these things together, is a very, very good angler. He's out all the time and he likes to use a PVA bag himself. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to one of the carpology testing the pro style things, and we're going to put Steve through his paces with the PVA bag.
Well, this is the peg I've decided to fish in, and as you can see, it's absolutely chucking it down. As we arrived, it's the first time I've ever seen this lake. Found out a little bit of information. Obviously, with it being a quarry, it's rather deep. So what I've done is I've just got the marker float out, haven't even cast out. I've just had a little drop in the margins, either side, left and right. Found that it's 7 foot, and I've got a nice clearing, a little bit of gravel, and then a little bit of low-lying weed just off these rushes down to my left. So all I've done is just knocked up a little bit of a mix, got some sweet corn, some 2mm pellets, some 8mm pellets, and some crushed tiger nut boilie. Put a little bit of oil in that, and I've just put 1 scoop to the left, 1 scoop to the right, and within about minutes I've started to see fish activity on the spots. Fish crushing, knocking the reeds, just giveaway signs that the fish are in the area. And with this low pressure system, they're up for a bit of a feed. I've then dropped a solid bag down the edge either side, and with about 3 minutes of the left one going out, it's gone away with a lovely mid-20 commons. Well, with the filming done for the day, I've managed to cheekily flick out a couple of rods in the margins, 2 solid bags, 1 down the left and 1 down the right. And the left one had probably only been out there about 3 minutes before it ripped off. With this one, a lovely low 20 common, gave an amazing fight. And yeah, what a lovely way to go into the evening. Hopefully there's going to be a few more, that old cliche, but we'll slip this one back and hope for a good evening.
Right, we've retired to the comfort of the outhouse because what we're going to do now is go through what's been going on below the surface since Steve's swim. Now, he caught a couple, he's had a pretty good session so far, and I've had the benefit of being able to go below the surface and have a look at exactly what he was doing. He hasn't seen it yet, so this is going to be really interesting. Now, you've got left hand and right hand rods out.
That's
you
right.
caught on the left, you've caught on the right. You put the rod back out again, but you didn't catch on the right hand side, and this is your right hand rod. So let's have a little look first about what is going on down there. So this is the sandy spot that you're on. You can see some perch on there straight
Plenty
away.
of little perch about.
Perch are really interesting because they're always first to come up and have a look at what's going on. You know, a little bit of corn there by the stone, and you can see right up against the rushes in the background, there's a little bit of bait that was left over, but out away from those rushes, there's no bait at all. So something has obviously been in and cleaned you out. Can you see what I'm pointing at there?
I've got no idea.
Well, just wait, because that is really, really impressive. Looking across your peg, it looks lovely. You can see why it's a really, really nice spot, but just remember what I pointed at, because you'll see it again a little bit later on. It is so hard to see.
Yeah.
It's nigh on impossible, and I've done an awful lot of tests and I've looked at an awful lot of these things, and you just can't see that. So it's really, really good. Stick with it, folks, you'll see a bit later on. But this is the spot. You can see there's a bit of bait there, so you've obviously stuck a scoop or two back in over the top of it. There's a little bit of bait. The corn stands out really well. The boilies look really pale, and the pellets look sort of browny colour. Perch again, nice drop off, few stones. When you were pulling back, what were you feeling?
The odd little stone, very nice clear sandy bottom compared to the other side of the peg where there's a little bit more, few roots about. But yeah, just a very nice gentle pull back with the odd stone really.
Which is exactly what it was. Now interestingly there, look, we're just coming back in over the top of your rig. Just pointing to it there, there's your hook bait. Now the first thing that stands out to me is that would have been a solid bag and there's nothing on it. So something has moved that, because normally a boilie would be right by the side of your lead, because that's where
right.
it would have landed in the bag. So something's picked it up and moved it. Now, I don't think you've been done by a carp there. I think that's probably rod, because there's a lot of big rod in the area and all the tiny particles have gone, but the bigger ones haven't. If it was carp, there'd be a lot more spread. But let's go back and look for that thing. Look, there it is again. Can you see it?
Well, it looks like it's coming off the end of my lead core, so I'm assuming that's line. Not because I can see it,
yeah, good call. That's it. That's your line.
Wow.
Now, you've been fishing slack lines, it's sunk down on the bottom, and it is just absolutely fantastic. It disappears completely, and you can say the same thing about it as it comes up through the surface of the water. Just running back along your lead-free lead core there. I very, very rarely find them. In fact, I think that's the first one that I've actually found. That was a lead, and it was about 2 inches away from your lead.
Wow.
It was half buried in there. But yeah, it was a lead. I don't find them. People say, oh, how many leads to find? You know what? That's the first one I found it live on camera. But you can see the spread of bait there. It's really interesting that, you know, you've had a flick out. I think some of the corn has been picked up by some of the rod. They've had the tiny particles, but actually the rest of it is in quite a big spread. How many scoops did you put out?
I was tending to put about 1 to 2 scoops out every time I either redid the rod, or if it had gone a little bit quiet, I would then just put another little scoop in just to freshen up the spot.
So across the period there, that would be 4 scoops in total?
Yeah, maximum.
With 1 fish caught over the top of it.
Yeah.
So that's a reasonable amount of bait out there, and there's quite a lot still there. So it goes to show that actually what you've done is pretty good, because you've picked the bait up straight away. There's pellets that haven't dissolved down. They weren't yours actually. You didn't bait those up, so somebody's been fishing here before. But just looking back along your setup there, really, really good. And that PVA bag has pulled the fish into it straight away, because there's lots of bait around, but your pellet mix obviously really, really works, because the fish have come in and you've had a bite off it.
Yeah, so really good result. Happy with that. I've seen that, because obviously going into coming into this morning, I'd had a bite on the left hander but not the right hander, so I was a bit concerned whether I'd been done, it had been moved, it was tangled. But seeing that, it looks like the rod have come in and just picked away at the pellets. But good to see that the rig is still fishing and could do a bite if a carp came in.
Right, this is the left-hand rod now, and you had a quick flick around to find out what was down there. You said there was a little bit more, a few weeds around.
Yeah, I had a quick little flick with the marker float just to quickly check the depth, because it is a deep lake. Perfect 7-foot depth there, and had a quick as I had a quick drag back, I could feel the odd little clump, or it was locking up on something. So I think that was probably smaller stems of the reeds that I'm fishing up against lower down in the water.
You've got a bit of an advantage here because it is crystal clear water, and when you look in you can see some of the emerging leafed plants that are coming up, and there's also some just below, and that, whilst it's on the surface, looks quite scary, but actually underneath it's not bad because they're just dead thin. It's a bit like a tree.
Yeah.
You know, some weeds are like bushes that are really heavy at the bottom that you can't fish over. Others are like trees that actually, if you get through the top bit and get down to the bottom, it's all right. So let's have a little look at your spot now. So once again, there's the stems that you were talking about. They're the ones that are just off. Look at the colour of the bottom. Really, really grey, little perch swimming past there. You can see a little bit of remnants of your old PVA bag. See the red pellets in there? So that's obviously where you put the bait out previously and where you caught from. Lots of little perch around, but we'll just have a little scan around the peg. 1 or 2 stones, but it is lovely. It's really, really pale. But if you notice, just on that lump there, it's actually a bit brighter than elsewhere. That's because the fish are fed on that, and when I'm under the surface and tracking as it is, it's like somebody going through the forest. I can see which way animals are moving because the leaves are bent over a certain way, or alternatively I can see where fish are fed because they polish the dust off. And if you look at that clip, you can see that exactly where you'd fed, it's actually whiter than the grey bits around the outside of it, and that's a perfect indication.
Been turned over, so to speak.
Something's been in there. So whenever I'm going around swimming, you can imagine if there's nothing on the deck, I can have a look and think, you know what, that's a spot that fish are fed on. This is a spot that fish is fed on. But let's get back to this now, and let's have a look at your rig coming in. So you're basically recreating what you did previously. So we can just see your rig's just gone in there, the PVA bag's hit there, and you've just clipped that weed on the way back in again. But it's obviously pretty close to where you put it last time, because when we go down you can see just how close it was.
Yeah, that's right in amongst some roots coming up there.
Just hidden there. Now that sounds awful, right in amongst roots, doesn't it? But actually when you get down to the deck, that doesn't look too bad at all. Once again, there's a little perch on it, and they're straight there. You've chucked a scoop over the top as well there by the look of it. Bait coming down, look. So that's what you did last time. 1 bag in, quick scoop over the top.
Just fishing for a bite at a time, really. You know, the fish might be holding up in these reeds, and just setting a little trap for them.
Definitely a patrol route, isn't it, round there? 100%. But, you know, bearing in mind that was a scoop that's come in, there's not that much on the deck now, is there?
No, not really. It's hard to really see in contrast against the bottom, apart from the colourful corn.
You know, we've seen it time and time again that you're putting a bit of bait in, you think that you've actually put quite a lot in, but actually on the deck it
absolutely
looks
nothing.
Virtually nothing. So I think, yeah, 2 or 3 scoops would probably make it look a little bit better. Right, so let's get back now to the rig itself and have a little look at where it was. Just about to see the remnants of the pellets there on the left hand side, and then look, there's your bag sitting lovely smack bang at the bottom. I'll just get a little bit closer. You've got a bit of red in there. It looks underwater, but you're obviously matching the hatch quite well. It's not an obvious standout bait, but different colour pellets in there stands out really well, doesn't it?
Yeah, just a little mixture, lots of different sizes of pellets and particles, and obviously different bit of colour, which should hopefully help it to stand out on different lake beds.
You know, that's a really nice wide now, so if there's a fish swimming past, it's going to come along. That's on a patrol route, but just doesn't look like there's a lot of bait around there. Never ceases to amaze me how little bait there is out there when we have a look. But let's just go back into it again now and run back up. Line's not obvious at all, and I'm really, really impressed with this line, I've got to say. Can't see it anywhere, it's pinned down nicely. There's a few little scatterings of boilies, a few little bits of bobs all the way around the place. And that bag looks absolutely brilliant in there. You know, if the fish is coming through, I think it's going to feed very, very confidently there. And you can just see the scattering. That's how close you were with your accuracy. That's how close you were to the last time. Just look on the right-hand side there as well. Big drop off. That's where it drops down. You say it's 7 foot. I think it's probably 8 foot on the edge of there, dropping down to 12 to 15 feet as it goes off the cliff and the abyss. And they're going to come around that corner and they're going to find your bait straight away. So, pretty impressive, mate. I've got to say, it looked really good, didn't it?
Yeah, no, it's a bit eye-opening really, because it's that aspect of your fishing that you never really get to see below the surface.
Rigs in bags, both of them presented really well. I think that's one of the things that I picked up straight away. If you can put a PVA bag on a decent bottom,
Yeah.
which is one of the things that we've discussed all the way through, it just looks brilliant, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You can imagine if you'd have chucked that in a load of weed, it wouldn't be anywhere near as effective as it is.
No, especially on that flat ground, and with the lighter colour of the lake bed, it really does stand out, you know, to the eye.
So, what are the 3 things that you've picked up from this?
Well, first of all, and this is one of the things that I tend to say every time we go out filming, doing this underwater stuff, is put more bait in than you think, because when it's out there on the lake bed, by the time it's fluttered down, it's spreading out, and there's nowhere near as much as what you think you've put in.
No, I'm a devil for being far too cautious with it. I think we need to put a lot more in than we actually do. Right, so more bait. Number 2?
Secondly, I've got to say that the Suffolk Advanced line that I've been using is really impressed me. It absolutely disappears as soon as it goes into that water, and as well as that, you know, when I've been playing the fish, they've been going into the reeds and coming out, and it's really held up and given a really good account of itself.
Yeah, I think coupled with the lead core as well, the gravity, it works. It's a good combination.
Yeah,
it really is a good combination. Right. Thing number 3, generally, whether it's about your fishing or what we've learned about PVA bags through the course of this trip as well, what's another thing that you've picked up?
Well, looking at the oil that we've injected into the bag, because I've always tended to use a lot of oil, especially in the summer months, but that really has opened my eyes, because it's like you said, it's not one of them things how you imagine it to disperse, like you know, a bit of a cloud, how you see other liquids that you use when you're spodding or put that in the water and it creates a cloud. It's actually going up in little droplets, which isn't how I really imagined it to have its effect.
Well, it's a first for me. That's the first ever time that I've seen it, because normally the water isn't clear enough or the oil isn't coloured enough to be able to see that. So actually putting the coloured oil in the clear water, it's actually quite good. And interestingly, you know, if the fish's eyesight is really good, that, thinking about it, might actually draw them in, and that could be a visual aspect for pulling them down as well. So you've got the smell, the taste, and also the visual aspect. Now, one of the things that I'm going to remind us of just before we finish now, and this was a really big one as well. Do you remember the PVA bag with the big lead in? And we heard the splash. Oh, yes. But we also heard the bang when it landed as well. The sound, how much sound travels through water. This is another thing, and it's making me think a little bit more about crunchy baits. Yeah. Because I think if we can get a little bit more sound going out there, it just adds another little advantage to what we're doing.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, and it sort of rang a bell, because I did learn about that when I was at Sparshot, and I remember one of my lecturers actually going that the fish do come in, one of their feeding responses is on the other sound of other fish feeding.
100%. They love the sound of other fish feeding. Folks, it has been a real eye-opener. Every single time I go underwater, I learn something. The oil was the big one for me, but seeing different bottoms, different colours, reinforcing what we found out already, how good PVA bags and PVA bag presentation is. It's been really interesting. Steve, well done on the fish.
Cheers, Rob.
Well done on the result as well. Don't forget, guys, you can follow us through social media. Don't forget to follow the YouTube channel, because there's loads more out there, both through Dynamite and also through Carp Spirit. And more to the point, give us a thumbs up, click like, click follow, and send your questions in. They're starting to build up. We've got some really good questions coming in, and next time we're out, we'll see if we can answer yours.